mogelijk. Dankjewel.
Hi, welcome everyone to the Pack House. Welcome to our event today with collaboration with Week Against Racism and Amsterdam United. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the program of today is going to go. We're going to begin with the spoken word artist, and then we're going to have introductions with more of our collaborators and guest speakers, followed by some clips on themes that we're going to have throughout the film that we're watching. And then we're going to have room for some Q&A and reactions of the clips that we're going to be watching. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and someone will come with the microphone and you can share your questions and answers with us. So to begin with, we are Amsterdam United. We are an intersectional student platform at the University of Amsterdam. So we're focused on creating a safe space for students of all backgrounds at the University of Amsterdam. And I'm Diana. Let me introduce myself. I'm Diana, and this is Kiara. We are members of Amsterdam United. And we are really excited to be able to be part of this event because one of the biggest words that we focus on is intersectionality. And as you've seen in the film, that's a key word when we talk about race, sexism, and everything that surrounds us nowadays. It's important to understand it through many different lenses, and that's what intersectionality allows us to do. And so within Amsterdam United, we were so happy to be able to collaborate with whom we're having today as guest speakers because they're powerful women who've been able to use their voices to challenge and question social norms and be powerhouses to be able to have conversations that sometimes people don't want to have. So we hope that today, we create a safe environment, most important. The clips that we are going to watch are thought provocative. So we ask that if you feel uncomfortable or you get triggered, you are welcome to leave. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and one of our board members will come and approach you if you need any support. Just want to make sure that everyone feels safe and heard and that you can be yourself here because in the end, we just want to make this an inclusive space for everyone to share who they are, as the film kind of shows that in itself. So now to begin with, I want to introduce Daniela Savati. She is our spoken word artist today. She writes prose, column, essays, and theater. And when she was just 13 years old, she released her first book, Zoiets Nomen Verusi. She won the Black Indigenous People of Color Voice Award in 2020 at the first Queer and Feminist Poetry Awards. And her passion for spoken word art has driven her to create her own platform for poets. Her platform is called Het Zwarte Shop. She's also the coordinator of the Poetry Circle 070. So she's, where is she? So she'll be joining us today. And Daniela, whenever you're ready, you can start.
If I'm not careful enough, I might strain a muscle. It's the one that is somewhere near my neck, and it's one that only a certain group of people have. And it's important that I'm cautious when I listen to the rhythm of my mother's singing, because that rhythm is the same rhythm of a revolution song. And it knows no hesitation, no translations. Sometimes I get lost when I do my own translations. So it's important that I'm cautious when I'm straining that muscle. Before I know it, I might end up in law school, stepping over sight and overachieving, hoarse voice from always raising it or raising up your hand in class or for the taxi, for the car that's about to drive you to the next gig opportunity or a wedding in a European church, and afterwards we get pregnant, and right before that I happen to listen more carefully to my mother's singing. No hesitation, no translation. I just got lost in a Western understanding of success, where a doctor means a king, and a car is a dream, and an artist is a black sheep, and a name is a property, and then Germany, we're making borders, and my very own existence is a delicacy. So we're marching in your lunch break from your 9 to 5, and babies are born to this polluted type of life. But my mother's singing, that rhythm, it stems from a deeper color of red. And I'm not talking about the colors that we shed. I'm not talking about the colors of the sea. I'm talking about the soils of the Congo, right there near the volcanoes, where the most beautiful flowers bloom. Right near the heat of a lava where flowers are being pushed up and let the wind whisper a melody right there to the valley of a people who made a muscle like no one else. It's somewhere near your neck. And some of them use them to lie white lies, to see Europe as a safe haven, and to excuse racism, to pursue colorism, to forget about themselves and to abandon self-love. And the self-hatred is so poisoning, another great responsibility for their offspring. But my mother, she uses that muscle to sing, and no matter how much I try, I understand that it's a language that I will never truly understand. And I understand that somewhere in between, the message gets lost in the translations. Because I only want to use my voice to raise it and to let other people know whatever I feel like I find happiness. I want to use my voice to tell people what make me happy instead of explaining to them what words anger me. I want to make the things that matter to me instead of going for a Western understanding of victory. I want to go for that notion that has emotion that makes me feel like I'm alive. Because truly, I am nothing if I believe to be an island. I am nothing if I believe to be a price tag. I am nothing if I deny my own blackness. I am nothing if not a sister to my own reflection. I want to use my voice to discover friendship in other women who look like me based on the color they give fee. Because the equation to my self-love equals to confidence to the power of infinite, confidence to the power of us. So my life is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a made-up more than fantasy, a booklet titled after me, so say my name and witness me. Not afraid, just look straight ahead and you will see. A daughter, a crown, a legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. I think her performance perfectly set the tone for today's event and the discussions that follow. Thank you so much, Danielle. That was very beautiful and touching. Daniela, sorry if I mispronounced your name. So, as you know, our discussion today is going to be centered around the film Sylvana, Demon or Diva, which was made in 2018 by director Ingeborg Janssen. The documentary follows the political pursuit of Sylvana Simons, as many of you who live in the Netherlands probably know her, as she contends for a seat in the Dutch parliament. She was born in Suriname and she migrated to the Netherlands as an infant, where she was predominantly raised in Amsterdam. A trailblazing news broadcaster, Simons transitioned to politics in 2016, which coincides with her first initial public criticism of the racist caricature of Black Pete or Zwarte Piet, which again many of you are aware of who are living in the Netherlands, an act that received harsh criticism and threats to be made on her life. Through intimate gapes into both her personal and political life, viewers get unadulterated access to the layered experiences of Black Dutch women in this film. You can see also a picture of Sylvana Simons. I'm going to introduce our guest speakers of the night, who we are very honored to be in the company of tonight. So first we have Valerie Ntinu. She is a Black Kenyan and Nigerian woman based in Rotterdam. She is a diversity and inclusion practitioner. In 2014, she dedicated her bachelor's thesis to analyzing tourism in Cuba and its commodification of Black female bodies. Her final master's thesis broadly looked into how self-identifying Black women experienced their interactions with white and non-Black men. Her big literary break came in 2020 when she contributed a piece to the One World magazine, a piece that analyzed her differing perceptions between the white and Black gaze, of her interracial relationship with a white CIS man, which has now ended, unsurprisingly. Valerie continues to contribute think pieces to Black-owned and Black-led magazines, avidly engage with African literature, and occasionally rant online. She is also the founder of the Drink Cafe initiative, which provides a space for Black and brown femmes and non-binary folks to connect through art and dialogue. We are very glad to have you with us, Valerie. You can also see her, catch a glimpse of her work, the piece that she wrote in One Word magazine. We can maybe go one slide forward from here. Yes, you can see it here. You can check it out on One World. Next, we have Cole Verhoeven here with us tonight. She is a poet, writer, painter, and endurance performance artist based in Amsterdam. In summer of 2021, she founded a small publishing house called Mkado Press. It is a small publishing apartment, as she puts it. She thinks that it's a more accurate term. Mkado Press released its first book in September of 2021. We can see the picture of the book, maybe, which is called Waarom werkt het zebrapad niet? Or Why Doesn't the Crosswalk Work? The book is full of questions from an eccentric toddler combined with lush visuals to make Why Doesn't the Crosswalk Work a sophisticated art book for children and simultaneously a children's book for adults. Additionally, Cole is a visual artist, she's a painter, an endurance performance artist, she's a member of the international abstract art collective The Active Painting, and has exhibited her work in so many different places like Sweden, Germany, and Japan. And she has also been awarded a master's degree in cultural entrepreneurship from DAS Graduate School in 2021. She was named business manager of the collective. And next month, she has a solo show in a new soon-to-open gallery in Amsterdam in the Westerpark neighborhood, you probably know. And in September, a show in Muranuma Park, Sapporo, Hokkaido in Japan. As a freelance writer, she churns out the occasional long read for the art, design, and architecture. Architecture publication, Damn Magazine, an explainer, and opinion pieces on social justice and journalist integrity for Amsterdam-based publication One World Magazine. And she is also a mother to a 13-year-old son. So yeah, to again set the tone for the event today and to illustrate the One World article, which is called White Fragility is a Misnomer. She has also she would like us to show a 7-second video from a TikTok video which shows a grid of white women on TikTok performing a trend where one acts as if one is crying and then stops. The sound they are using is full of them pretending to cry, which has also faced a lot of criticism from Black women, and they have been called out because they think that it shows how white women's tears have been weaponized against Black women. We can see the video now.
Turn it off.
That's it. It runs into another.
You can see it speaks for itself. We're now going into our first theme of tonight.
Yes, and our first theme is racist sexism. I am both Black and a woman from Savannah Simons in the film. As you're watching this clip, just keep this theme in mind, racist sexism, and sort of how Savannah experiences it, and if this is something you yourself resonate with. So we can play the clip.
Het is heel mooi met fietsen daarachter. Ja? Oké. Zo. Zo? Aandacht, aandacht. Dankjewel, lieverd.
Nou, dat maakt dan weer een hoop
Snap
goed.
je?
Well,
Okay. Cole, would you like to
Yeah,
start the
it's
conversation?
this always gives me like heart racing. I picked this clip because I think it really sums up yeah, women in public facing roles in this case politics as opposed to being a meteorologist or something. That black women face not only just the criticism of that comes with being a politician, but also, you know, the N word and the misogyny and the misogynoir, which is exactly what our evening is about. But you can't just take a simple photo up. You're also going to be, you know, experience racist violence. So yeah, it takes me a few seconds to get back down from that clip because I really hate the N word first to begin with. And the fact that she has to keep her composure, and she does, you know, it's why she does that job and I don't. But throughout, you know, it's just, it eats me up the way that she has to, you know, keep smiling, keep looking nice on the camera, and just pretend that's not going in. And hopefully it's not, but that was why I picked that. Also, I wanted to just get into talking about politics a little bit, but not about policy so much. If I'm reminded of Diane Abbott, and I don't know how familiar, UK, and whatever you think of her politics, she has received so much virulent racism and critique. And I sometimes think about Rutte and here and how he can so easily say things like, I don't know, I don't remember, I was naive, and how she can't get away with any of that. And I found a study that Amnesty International did in 2017, I think, or 2016. And they had clocked or logged all of the emails that all of the female MPs at the time, including Diane Abbott, had gotten, and just, you know, all of the violent, racist, or misogynistic emails, all of the online abuse, and found that 47% of it went to her alone. So the other 55% or 53% went to all of the women, and then she received like 47 or 45% of the virulent emails. And I think, you know, where I'm going to jump ahead for a second to where white feminism has failed us is that it takes that study from Amnesty International to realize that that black women need more care. We need more, and care, by care I mean security, you know, ahead of time. And I want to talk about one more politician before. Cecile Kyenge in Italy. And I mean, she just had first a black MP there, but she had bananas literally thrown at her. And I remember what she went through, and how I was overhearing discussions about how do you know that's really racism? I mean, it's banana, and having to explain, which I refuse to do. I don't, except for tonight, I'll talk about racism, but generally I don't like to get into this. He said, she said. Is that racist or not? But those are my main takeaways from when I see Silvana and these trailblazers, and whatever I feel about their individual politics. I mean, I'm 100% behind Silvana, and I don't know too much about Diane, except that, you know, she's received a ton of critique, and no one is above critique, of course, but this critique layered with racism is it's just too much, and it's dangerous.
Does anyone have any questions for Cole or reactions from the clip?
I also wanted to say, you know, as black women, we're always given these compliments of like how, you know, strong and resilient we are. But I feel like that's a way of denying care and denying security for a very long time. And then on the other hand, if another group is called fragile, it's a way of like, you know, disproportionate amount of care that goes to protecting that group. And I think we're also seeing that. Did you want to?
Yeah, I guess it was, I'm a little close. It was to that point regarding Black women as strong, and then it forces the likes of Savannah. So when you face such vitriol, I think in every clip, and you'll continue to see clips where she sort of is able to compartmentalize and still not react, because that'll go against the grain of that narrative. And it's almost a gaping hole where it's easy for people to then rely on the angry Black women narrative. And so in denying us that care, it also stifles us in how emotionally expressive we can be, especially in situations like those.
You mean that she's like swallowing a lot, and then
Precisely.
she's
Exactly. And she's
health.
Exactly.
Yeah, the health issues. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was
Yeah, I think we can go on to
your
clip
clip.
This
two.
is my clip.
Yeah. And then we'll have a rounded.
En er genoeg. Wat zeg je? Echt? Ja, maar echt. Echt. Die wil ik dus eigenlijk het liefste achteraan lopen en vragen. Maar wat zei je nou eigenlijk? Maar oké.
Je staat zo vaak. Aanstoot.
Wauw, ongelooflijk. Het probleem is, JC, wat we ook doen. Ik geloof echt in de woorden van Dr. Phil. You teach people how to treat you. Komen jullie erbij zitten of kan ik jullie helpen?
Oh nee, ik ben gewoon geïnteresseerd om even te kijken. Mag dat?
Kijken mag, maar het is altijd heel erg beleefd als je dan even voorstelt. Of je liep net zo verbolgen
Ja, je was
langs.
wel
Dat ik...
zo kijken, weet je. Ik ben niet zo gewend dat ik BN'ers hier zie, dus
Nou ja, kom je even voorstellen zou ik zeggen.
Zeker.
Hoi. Jij
Jasper.
bent? Dag Jasper, ik ben Sylvana.
Ja, dat weet ik.
Wat gebeurde er net met je?
Nou, ik denk van, ik zie hier een BN'er, dus ik denk van, wow. Dat zie ik niet zo vaak.
En als je een BN'er ziet die je niet zo vaak ziet, dan ga je onaardig schelden.
Ik was niet aan het schelden.
Nou, er kwam iets uit je mond. Ik denk niet dat het aardig was.
Ik zei, wow.
Weet je het zeker?
Ja, dat weet ik wel zeker.
Nou ja.
Wat zei ik dan, volgens jou?
Nou, weet je, taal is meer dan woorden. Het is lichaamstaal. Het is de manier waarop je de energie die je uitstraalt. Ik voelde agressie van jou afkomen. En toen wilde ik achter je aankomen lopen en je even in je kraag grijpen.
I don't think that was.
No, I don't.
I don't think that was the entire clip.
Oh, did you want that?
No, it goes on into 117.
She keeps talking.
Should I?
Maybe we have technical issues.
Maybe we have technical issues. Should I just get into it?
Yeah.
So I guess I'll give at least speak a little bit to that first bit before we get to the other part of that clip. And so, given the context that we received about Sylvana's lived experience at the top of the session, I feel like I almost have to give context to that entire situation, because devoid of the power dynamic there at play, it seems that the white male in question was justified to being in that space. And so as someone who has faced racist, sexist violence, often at the hands or caused by harm by white males, it's understanding that Sylvana has this response to that person standing there. It's understanding that it falls into a pattern that she's found herself in, and that justifies her response to Jasper in question. However, from the beginning, we see that he's almost committed to misunderstanding her. He's committed to gaslighting her perspective and also switching the narrative around. And so how he perceives their interaction, in his opinion, holds more weight than the way she perceives the interaction. And I think this falls into a pattern where, like most white, cis, middle-class men, like Jasper, there's almost an incapability to really interrogate their positionality. And that's just fancy words for they are not able to see what they represent in a space. And so it is simply not enough for them to rely, in a situation like this, it's simply not enough to rely, okay, my intention wasn't to do this, et cetera, but there needs to be a level of self-awareness whereby this is a woman that has faced racial and sexist violence from a particular group. You standing there by virtue of ascribing to particular identity markers sends a certain signal. And when she mentions that, I was, and it gets to that later in the clip, if we can get that running. And when she mentions that, I'm intimidated by you standing here, it almost hits at the core of white cis male entitlement, and there's a bit in the clip where Jasper in question says he has every goddamn right to stand where he wants to stand. But when you're part of an underrepresented or disenfranchised group, you almost internalize that not all spaces are for you. And so you have this bit in your mind where, whether that's inclusivity, whether I don't see anyone that looks like me represented there, which goes almost against the core of white male existence, where I'm free to be anywhere I want to be, if that's occupying spaces that are not intended for me. And so his inability to then interrogate that and that self-awareness makes it easy for them to flip it back on her. And if you're watching that clip devoid of that context, it's easy to see her response as an overreaction. But it's so much more layered than that.
I think they told us that we can see the full clip.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Okay, perfect.
Kijk dan, volgens jou. Nou, weet je, taal is meer dan woorden. Het is lichaamstaal. Het is de manier waarop je de energie die je uitstraalt. Ik voelde agressie van jou afkomen. En toen wilde ik achter je aankomen lopen en je even in je kraag grijpen en even vragen, wat gebeurt hier?
Allereerst riep ik niks toen ik wegliep. Maar het moment dat ik hier langs loop en ik zeg van, wow, daar zit Sylvana Simons. Dan is dat een vorm van agressie?
Mag ik iets zeggen? Maar weet je hoe ik het interpreteerde? Ik interpreteerde het van jij komt binnenlopen, je ziet Sylvana Simons en zowel in je lichaamshouding als in je intonatie, ja? Zo interpreteerde ik het, een bepaalde walging.
Ik vraag je wat is er, dat negeer je, nogmaals, is ook een vorm van agressie. 2 minuten later sta je daar achter, ja, is ook een vorm van agressie.
Nee, ik ben niet helemaal eens.
Heel even. Ik wil graag uitpraten. Dan sta je een paar minuten later met je jas zo hier de boel eens te bekijken. Kan heel intimiderend overkomen. En extra intimiderend overkomen bij meisjes zoals ik, een meisje van 47 hoor, daar gaat het verder niet om, die als ik hier de deur uitloop, misschien wel moet vrezen voor mijn leven. Dus neem mij niet kwalijk dat ik aan jou vraag wat is er en dat als jij daar gaat staan, dat ik dan van jou wil weten met welke intentie sta je daar heel intimiderend met je Moncler. Wat is het? Canada Goose, jas, zo hier de boel te bekijken. Dat is de reden waarom ik het vraag. Nu ben jij aan de beurt. Jasper.
Nou, dankjewel. In eerste instantie was het niet de bedoeling om je te beledigen, want dat komt kennelijk zo over voor jou. Jij loopt me nu een beetje te intimideren van...
Ik loop jou te intimideren.
Ik mag hier toch gewoon godverdomme...
Je gaat daar staan, ja? En ik zeg het nog een keer. Taal is meer dan woorden, hè? Is ook lichaamstaal.
Ja, daar ben ik mee eens. Ik
vindt het ook tijd geweest. Het was erg leuk kennis met je te maken. Nu heb je een BN'er gezien in dit gebouw, nota bene. Heel erg aangenaam. Wij gaan weer verder met waar wij mee bezig waren.
Maar vervolgens...
Ga maar weg, want wij willen graag verder in je vriendgroepje. Doei, fijne avond.
Fijne spelers.
Jasper rubbed me up the wrong way. Yeah. Dus I need either alcohol, sex, drugs, something.
Ga lekker een bad liggen met een wijntje of zo.
Ik denk dat het alcohol wordt, ja.
Yeah, this also bothers me, but it's more, I feel like, she's surrounded by allies, and I always find that they're not quite doing enough, They could have cut that off. They could have cut off his gaslighting. He's like drunk. He probably, he's saying, what did I say? That, that kind of person who wants to hear what they said so they can either like enjoy it again or, laugh about their thing. And I feel like they're being a little too nice to him, but I don't know if everyone's seen the actual film from the beginning to end. Because in the very, very, very first scene, I felt this similar phenomenon. And Matthijs van Nieuwkerk has a program called The World Draait Door, De Wereld Draait Door. And one of the guests says the N-word, and instead of him just, this is my show, cutting it off, this isn't acceptable, colonial language, whatever you want to say, he kind of shifts the feelings, the whole discussion to her feelings. Like, she doesn't, my guest on the table, she doesn't appreciate this kind of language you're using, but he doesn't really make a stand, like, I don't want this. This is my table. This is my show. And I truly believe this host is, wouldn't wouldn't call himself a racist, of course, and wouldn't probably commit racist acts, but by also giving equal weight to both of them, you know. So I feel like somehow the care is, you know, I think maybe even her circle sees her as so strong. They don't really, they just kind of nod and go along. But there is a way to just cut that off right away. And I feel like I always get these questions if I write something for One World, like, but what can we do? You know, what can we do as allies? What are we supposed to do? And from people who've stopped with I don't commit racist acts and I don't condone racism, and that's as far as it goes. And no one's asking like for you to jump in there and get violent. I mean, unless that's needed. But this one moment of interception that rarely happens, and if it does, it's kind of like, well, she doesn't, you know, it's by proxy. It's not like I don't like this, and I know that white people don't have a skin in the game. It's not hurting them to hear the N-word so much as like, you know, that makes me just like cringe. But I understand that. But there has to be some kind of, I think we all know, you know, white people listen to other white people more than they listen to black people, which is also white supremacy. But I feel like I'm just always missing that, you know, jump in there in those moments, know what your position is, and I think and be clear about that, and know what you, don't wait for the black person to go through all this and then kind of go, and obviously, you know, don't do it afterwards when the situation is over. I feel like a lot of that is happening, and because she's so strong, she's also not going to call out her team. So I just, you know, I'm watching this with like, you know, this woman needs a break. You know, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk over you, but I will
definitely just want to echo that. It always seems like the onus is on her. So the emotional labor of having to experience the racism and then also have to fight to justify that it was indeed racism, especially to a person that like the person in the clip who clearly, to your point, was trying to just, I don't know, make light of the situation. And so there's multiple people around her that could have jumped in at any point. But in recurring clips, we do see her almost play three roles.
Herself.
Exactly, where she experiences a racism. She has to justify that it was indeed racism, and then at the end of it, she still has to compartmentalize and maintain face.
Yeah,
and no, not all of those three tasks then fall on her.
That's why you know, I think we have to like stop using this term allies unless you're just going to use it as a verb, and it's something you do. It's not something you are, and you know. I think it's not so as complicated as people, it's really uncomfortable, but it's not as complicated what you have to do the next step. I think yeah.
I think we have a question.
Well, I don't know if we've got a question. I think it's more like a statement.
All right.
Yeah.
First and foremost, the film was about Savannah. And I know everybody in that frame. And her allies... Oh, do I need a microphone?
Yes.
And her allies, what you are watching is the formulation of a political party. And they're fighting to vote into government as a legitimate party.
Yeah, I'm
and
aware
although
of that.
Silvana is very much the foreperson, the film has a context. I work at IDFA, so I opened it to the world. It's a filmmaker making a film about a subject matter. That subject matter was Silvana, not by aid. So the editing in that particular image, I think you'll find that if you watched it in real time and bore witness in the space, you would see that Shahiro, Jazz, people do intervene. But the film was actually about Silvana, so it's been edited to get her reactions.
Okay.
And secondly, in a country that's this racist and this patriarchal and this stuck up its arse, to formulate a party that's fighting for people of colour is in itself madness. And so these people at Bayane are hovering around in tiny little spaces with no donation money, donating food from people like us to formulate something that is inconceivable. So during that particular period, now that they've had some time in government and they've learned how office works, how the celebrity of politics works, because I also happen to know Diane Abbott, who looks through 45% of the emails and realises all publicity is good publicity, because she's a strangely well-versed politician, because that's what politicians do. They go out there to put themselves in that context. And lastly, as a non-politician, as a woman of colour, when we're having intellectualised, privileged conversation, because there are no ethnic women here that are as diverse as the women I work with in the Diamant Spirit, who have been here for years and years and generations, are part illiterate and still live on social security and food banks. I think the role of women and racism on the streets is what this political party is trying to formulate to protect.
Okay.
They are the invisible.
Yeah.
So that is my context to this particular clip, because I've seen the entire film several times because I had to moderate it. And it really is a filmmaker's film. IDFA is a filmmaker's film festival. It is a film about Savannah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think you should take my criticism of allyship for those individual people personally. It's just in that clip, and that's all we have. You know, I have only the film and not all of the outtakes. But the comment about allyship is general. It's about jumping in the moment. And I'm sure that I'm not saying they leave her alone. You know, I'm just saying there are these spaces that we haven't investigated where it is possible to cut that off, you know, and nothing against them. I'm just saying we should look at those spaces a little bit more carefully, because there are moments that we're missing. And I think I was trying to contextualize the very first, did I mention the very first 5 minutes of the film?
Yeah, with the N-word, yeah.
Where something exactly similar happens. And so it's not like those, I'm not saying her allies aren't her allies, but if we want to do more for her, and it is about her, there's a moment that we can capture. We're not going to watch this again. And that was the moment I'm talking about.
Right.
Is that clear, or am I?
Extremely.
Okay.
Extremely clear.
I mean, just the same. I just want to specify, if I'm talking about whiteness, or I mean, I'm not talking about specifically white people. And so if I'm talking about allies, I'm not talking about a specific person. I'm talking about the concept of allyship and the concept of whiteness and white feminism. It's not a white feminist or...
Right, and it's highlighting opportunity, most importantly. So they might do that outside of that particular frame, but this was an opportunity to do so.
To describe a phenomenon, a mechanism that's faltering, and so it's like it doesn't make sense to, talk about the individuals in that clip at all. And to talk about, that's why I also prefaced, I'm not going to talk about Diane Abbott's politics, because I don't even live in the UK. But the fact is, if you have 1,000 abusive emails to all the female MPs, and then 47% or 45% of them go to one person, that is something to look at. What she does with that publicity, I don't care. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying there's danger there for all politicians. So if
can I return then? Because originally it was about care, and I would like to explore what that care would be.
Yeah, that's the question.
Because, for me, that's why I've been with Week of Racism for 5 years now, and I came tonight for answers rather than just naming. Because we've been 5 years naming at Week Against Racism, so we need some insight on how to actually care. Can we hit institutions, because that's what we're doing at the moment with Week Against Racism. I've been with Amsterdam United for a long time. The students are not getting any recognition in this country. We had a diversity officer that was white, for God's sake. So in that sense, where is the care? How do we access the care?
Well, I think you're answering some of the questions. I mean, that diversity officer was a wrong choice. I mean, that's pretty. But when I'm talking about care, I'm talking about on these small interpersonal levels related to this film. And I think if I'm going to be really cliche, let's say we're on this table and something racist happens and this is a boardroom. The care that doesn't happen is what what an example of no care is afterwards someone says, yeah, that was really racist what my boss said, but not jumping in the moment. And I think leaving us to kind of falter and to do this back and forth. Yes, it was racism. This was racism. This wasn't, this back and forth with the racist, and to be, cheering us on in the background, but not really doing anything in the moment. So I think that's what I'm talking about with care. There are moments when you can jump in and not leave all of the explanation of racism to the black women, basically. Right. It's not I didn't invent it. I don't profit from it. Why am I doing all the explaining of it?
And I guess it's also the emotional labor of defining what that care is. I also don't want to have to define what that care is.
I wouldn't mind if it puts a little bit to this discussion to an end eventually, and that it can come up with some action points for sure. But the fact of not even looking at the care and looking at all the looking the other direction, I think that's. So to answer your question, if we watch the film again, the very first 5 minutes, you can see a really good example of where care could have been made and where the where the host could have just said, shutting this down. Yeah. I guess you have to start with your positionality. How bad is racism to me, as a white male, or as a, how it doesn't really feel that bad. It's kind of, maybe it didn't feel that. Yeah, it's like, what would he have done if Silvana hadn't been sitting there? Would he have just kind of let him ramble? But that was, for me, a perfect example.
Yeah, and I think what you said most importantly, an ally is what you do, not what you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does anyone have any thoughts, comments I
just have something to share, because oftentimes we expect that the solutions come right away. It's always a process, and sometimes it takes listening and reviewing. It's just not going to come right away, and we often just compress that space because it's a journey to change and unravel. And I think it's also nice to expand that as we're trying to speak about these things, that you have to go on that journey too, and that's what a lot of people just forget. Yeah, just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we want quick answers, but like you're saying, we don't want to do the labor of and deciding.
Exactly. I think that's probably the most irritating question. I think in my profession would be, you highlight all the things you face, and then you'll get okay, but what can I do question? And it's like, that's not for me to determine. So it's like you said, listening, and then from that being intentional and figuring out, what role based on the position I play, if you've got influence, whether that's financially or the role you hold in an organization, do with that as you will, but I'm not going to experience it and then also come up with solutions.
Anyone else? Yeah.
For me, it's just a comment. I mean, if you take this scene as I can recognize this. It could have happened in other situations as well, even if it's not a banner. Yeah. And what I see, that the decision for someone to intervene is also always like, what's your liability, right? And taking this scene for, let's say it's real, like just like that, no one react, etc. We do notice that who intervenes is a guy. It's a man. They're all young, apparently. It's a man, and I can see that in my own personal life. As a woman to intervene, and also with this thing of women have to be, nice and soft and polite, keep it netjes. Even if they're facing this stuff. So, yeah, it really boils my blood. I have had personally also just raised, even if it's nothing, not a big deal. Sometimes in my own personal experience in the Netherlands, it's even if it's not so much, just saying a little bit is the unnamed, unspoken. There's so much taboo, that is, I don't know, I'm not native speaker, I don't know, speaker, so I say it was, that is niet aardig, of wat raar, or whatever, So yeah, I can really recognize, what would the others need to say? Yeah, that's for me it's still a big question. I was in the other group discussion group on how to be an active bystander, and I was left out still with an unanswered question. It's like when something racist happens, like crude, like this kind of example, you know, N-word, it's easier to spot it. Mm-hmm. It's there, and that you don't say that. We know that now. We don't say those things. But what if it's the subtle thing? Or it's just not even a subtle, you just don't speak about it. Like, I was downstairs, just like confused. What if you just saying like, oh, noticing, oh, this is a very wide audience, or this is a very wide panel, or like, this is only men, or this is only women. Here. Yeah, that's still, I don't know what to, I have ideas of what to say, but what would be the politically correct way and the most impact, what would make more impact? It
Thank you,
depends.
Valerie. I think you wanted to add. Yeah.
So I think I wanted to just sort of revisit the theme and the phenomenon that's taking place, particularly with the case of Savannah, and that's misogynoir. That's exclusive to Black women.
Yeah.
And so what she encounters in speaking up, in being the person that she is those two processes taking place. So whatever ramifications any other group faces, it's not going to be misogynoir. So if you are a white female, maybe you will be deemed emotional, but you're not going to near the experience she has by virtue of being a Black female. And so it's not that you will be devoid of any ramifications, but you spare one person from experiencing the nexus of these two things happening at once.
And the misogynoir is why we're here. And
Precisely.
Exactly. It's about, and it's whatever we say, it's already like a million times worse.
Exactly.
If you're dark-skinned Black woman, and all the politicians I've listed, you know, are that, and it just piles on and piles on. So yeah, we get kind of distracted with people of color. We have to keep on track with that, because this is a very big intersection. I think if white feminism, not white people, hadn't failed us, we would have been sooner had care and more security and more, you know, it takes a long time before the care and the security kick in. But I mean, I think that I'm hoping that Savannah has enough security. I just kind of like cross my fingers, and in the film it seems like she does, but I mean, she's still kind of, you know, a woman alone sometimes, and just in her taxi or going to her taxi, and it's just very dangerous. And it's easy to not not see that, to not see the danger, and to, you know, to see the strong woman. But, you know, we know better. You know, I mean, and it's not saying that she's not strong, but Jesus, you know, we want to also have a little bit of a break. Yeah.
And it goes back to understanding the word intersectionality. I mean, it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who literally was her experience as a Black African-American woman. And now we see Savannah here in the Netherlands experiencing the exact same abuse that is experienced for Black women around the world.
I mean, anti-Blackness is global. It really is. I mean, everywhere you go, it's everybody knows about it and what to do, and
yeah, and it goes to another layer with our theme on racist sexism, which is what you were adding, and speaking as well as to how many layers and onions you have to peel to get to the core of, you know, it's not just one, it's the other. I think we have someone else. Yes, please.
Oh, wow. It's me.
No, just an observation.
No.
Yeah. It's fine. Just an observation from that scene with Jasper. I don't know whether you also picked up on it. I felt like he gained some sort of high from pushing her into a corner.
It's almost like he wanted her to fulfill this angry Black woman trope. And I feel like I've been in that position many times where you feel not only is a person committed to misunderstanding you, but they're trying to put you in a box. And then when you react, it's kind of like, you see.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah, we did see that when he did flip the script and say, like, you're intimidating
me. Exactly. And then he kind of seemed to get happier the more, you know, animated she became.
Right.
So,
And this isn't the first time that's been hurled to sort of, you know, hoping to to break her argument. I think that's something as Black women you're extremely sensitive to when you express an opinion or when you try to assert your boundaries, that you can so quickly go from who you are as a person to the angry Black woman.
So it's all, and we see that, and I don't know whether we'll have the opportunity to see other clips where she speaks to a confidant, or she's constantly trying to get some sort of validation from those around her. Like, was I okay? Did I maintain? Was my emotions in check? And I don't feel like that's an experience from other groups. So you want to stake claim, not even stake claim, but simply exist, rightfully so. And your argumentation, or just like your plea to do so, is so quickly categorized or silenced through that language.
Of angry black women.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. I think this discussion can very well lead us to the next theme that we have, which is, we have labeled it as when power and privilege meet a demand for accountability. In the first clip of this theme, we're going to watch a fragment of Silvana's interview with an interviewer who is a white male journalist. We can watch the clip and then discuss.
Het is natuurlijk van de zotte dat we steeds ongewenst resultaat hebben, maar nog steeds hetzelfde blijven doen. Het is tijd om dat systeem aan te pakken.
Nou ja, ik ben het daar wel een beetje mee eens. Kijk, als het ook met de Zwarte Piet bijvoorbeeld, hè, van als je zeg maar zelf een feestje zou geven en je hoort van 20-30% van de mensen die je hebt uitgenodigd, die vindt dat en dat echt vervelend, hè, van dat je die muziek
maar je hebt
doet
ze niet
of
eens
zo.
uitgenodigd. 20%, 30% van de mensen die bij jou wonen, in jouw huis wonen, die vinden het niet leuk. Niet de mensen, die mensen zijn niet op bezoek.
Ja, nou ja, dan is het wel een soort menselijke
Nee, maar hoor je hoe belangrijk dat subtiele verschil is?
Empathische.
Die mensen zijn niet op bezoek. Als jij bij mij thuis op bezoek komt en je blijft een nachtje slapen, een weekje, dan zeg ik: Bert, dit is hoe we het bij mij thuis doen. Als je binnenkomt heb ik graag dat je je schoenen uitdoet. Als je iets uit de koelkast pakt heb ik graag dat je het weer terugzet. En als je de ruimte verlaat wil je dan alsjeblieft het licht uitdoen. Mijn bank staat hier, mijn tafel staat daar, wees welkom. Dat is als je bij mij op bezoek bent. Als wij gaan samenwonen, dan gaan wij samen bepalen hoe we de bank neerzetten, welke kleur gordijnen we ophangen, mag je hier wel of niet met schoenen binnen, en wie doet de boodschappen en wie zet de vuilnis buiten. En dat is het grote verschil. Als jij bij mij komt wonen, dan maak ik plek voor je vrij. En zolang wij blijven zeggen dat er hier mensen op bezoek zijn...
Zo had ik het niet bedoeld.
Nee, dat
Je
weet
moet het niet
ik.
zo
Ik weet dat je het zo niet,
Ja.
dat je het zo niet bedoeld hebt. Ik zeg ook niet, jij zegt nu expres iets om vervelend te zijn. Dat zeg ik niet. Maar ik heb helaas 3 keer nodig om die dissonantie duidelijk te maken.
Succes.
Succes.
Paul, would you like to start?
Yeah, I wonder. I just leaving that clip, wondering if he even got the message. Even that idea that certain people, based on the way they look, are even if you're born here, that you're still a guest and you really don't have a say in Black Pete discussion, for example. But I noticed that even then she's doing a lot of explaining. She's like holding in her irritation. She's probably explained this a million times. It's not really super complicated, systemic racism or any systemic oppression, because once you learn one, you kind of learn the system. But once again, I feel like almost has to lower her IQ to kind of explain this to these people who are pretending to be like a bumbling, naive people, and it's just it's really annoying. But she manages to keep her. She does it time and time again. But this dissonance is problematic. I mean, she's by herself again, so we can't really. I think it's a shame that there's not more to know, because I'm kind of curious. Is he gonna get it? Is he pretending? Is he gonna snap back into his thing? And she has to take, as far as the word care, again, I see her taking a lot of care for his feelings. Like he's saying, no, but that's not what I meant. And she has to kind of like talk him down, like, don't worry, I'm not calling you a racist. But his worldview definitely is racist. He just hasn't really interrogated that. But again, he gets to sit like a scolded child, and she has to do a lot of labor for him.
And I think a theme that we see in this clip, the clip before, and I think the next clip that I'll discuss, is this conversation around intent. So I think every time someone is, or at least she calls someone out, we go back to, oh, but that wasn't my intention. And I think there's a really distinct difference between intent and impact. And so maybe, I don't know, that wasn't the intention to cause that reaction in her. However, it goes back to, your point regarding when you question your position and how it sounds coming out of a specific mouth. It's not enough to look at intent alone, but to see that, okay, maybe my intentions were pure, quote unquote, but that's the impact that it's had. And so it's worthwhile to listen through and understand how that was received and the way it was received versus relying on the same, oh, well, I didn't mean to. It's like stepping on someone's foot and then saying, okay, say sorry, but it's like, oh, I didn't mean to step on your foot, therefore I'm never going to say sorry.
Yeah, but it's not even the same because he actually said the words. He said 30%. Yeah. He didn't say the words by accident. I mean, he actually said these people are guests, and exactly. So to go, he could say, oh, I didn't mean to say the word, but you did say the words. It's right. Like you did step on the foot, you know. So I think he didn't want the accountability, but he did want to say, 20-30% don't want this, and those are guests. Yeah, I think that's what I mean by I think what I've started to do, and it's not about fragility, is to say, okay, if people don't like being called racist, which, whatever, they definitely have a racist worldview without having, so I've just been saying that, and that has the same impact for me. So I don't feel like I'm, catering to fragility, but I also feel like I'm saying something more accurate. This thing, okay, you're not like calling me the N-word, and you're not doing this and that, and you're not committing these racist acts right in front of me, but your worldview is 100% racist and uninterrogated, perhaps.
And you definitely still benefit and contribute to it, so puts you right at the center of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I use this more for people who haven't even interrogated, like, why am I getting pushback for a certain thing, and that's from your racist worldview, not calling you an individual racist. I thought you saw. No. I thought there was a thing.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions or remarks? Yeah.
Entourage.
So, I think this clip showed was a very good metaphor for how insidious this racist worldview is. So already the journalist not being aware of assuming that people So the whole Black Pete thing, assuming basically assuming that Black people are guests in the Netherlands, Black people who've grown up here, were raised here. Me personally, as a Black person, a Dutch Black person who was born here, was raised here, couldn't be more Dutch. Constantly being questioned in your Dutchness, and that also being a spectrum for when you study here, you work here, whatever. You came at a later point in life, and what I was thinking about as well, and I want to connect this actually with the previous clip, was the role of the camera. So I think Jasper was very aware that there was a camera pointed at him, and it was like a performance.
He's cleaning up. Yeah.
And I wonder what if the camera wasn't there, how he would react it. Right. And it also makes you think about anecdotes from people who sort of pass as white and the kind of bullshit that they hear, because people think, oh, like now we can say it. So it's very insidious with very real consequences. Such as, for example, the decision by a judge that racial profiling is allowed to keep illegal migrants out. Right. It has very real consequences. So also, like, the question of, like, oh, where do you come from, Yeah, I'm Dutch, I'm from here. So people think, like, oh, yeah, but I didn't mean like that, I'm curious, blah, blah, but they don't get to see that there's a lot more behind that. And so, sort of to finish up, what I was going to say is that I actually also think it has value, like discussions like these, because I noticed for myself, and it also ties into what Adesokan earlier said, that my sense of reality has also shifted, because I grew up here, and then it's insidious, and you also internalize that, and when you then start calling it out, you also, I mean, I noticed it for myself, that it's very easy to doubt yourself, because especially if you're the only person of color, the only Black person in a room, in a house, it's very easy for sort of the dominant norm to question your experience, question your sense of reality. So I think it has a lot of value to have these kind of discussions to reinforce, like, hey, but this is actually real. and then to go on from there and to formulate certain demands so that I don't know, it's kind of utopian, but like, you know, that everybody is within the house as like, you know, there's equity within the house. You're all equal members of this household. So yeah, I think there's also value in having these discussions and insulating yourself from gaslighting, basically.
Right. And just to respond to that, and that's why it's just so therapeutic to find, you know, your group of Black people, where I think I've arrived to a point where it's sort of a crossroads where I can continue to sort of educate and try to have, you know, the other understand, or I can just simply, you know, relish and enjoy and have my experiences, you know, validated through the people and the relationships I have. And going down that route is so much better than for your mental well-being. Then big ups to Silvana, but could not be me.
Could not be me
at all.
either. No. I mean, I think the next step is, and that's for another next year, I guess. But like to just decenter whiteness completely as a Black person, and not have every single thing, not react to it, and not define yourself by it or define yourself against it, or, you know, just to be you without this gold standard is then gone, you know. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm trying to get to, where I don't even consider whiteness as a you know, something to work against or to to define myself. And I don't even explain it eventually. In a perfect world, I wouldn't even be an expert in it anymore. I wouldn't even consider, you know, just, I mean, I guess that's not that's not possible for survival. You have to really know what's going on. But to just, to decenter it as often as possible. And that's the hardest thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for white people, it's very important to the awareness of that, the center, that the fact that white is centered.
The center.
It is very important that I mean, not we specifically, but for them to be aware of that centralization and work against it, because many of them are not, and many of them think that they don't think that way, but
so
subconsciously they do, and they're not even aware of it.
I think there's something about like finding out, you know, even you know, becoming aware of it, but it feels okay, you know. I mean, you can feel a little guilty, but in your daily life, you don't really have to. You can flip back into your unawareness, I guess, and I think that's a problem. I think that a lot of racism feels okay for white people, and what I mean by that is if we can pretend for a bit that it's on a spectrum and that we've all experienced it, you know, if I say, let me take an example out of life. If I go into a supermarket and I don't take a basket, I know that security is going to be telling me to get a basket. But if a white woman goes into a supermarket, that's I've seen them like kind of just put stuff in their purse and then go, and I think, shit, if I did that, I would be like out of here. So we are both experienced. You know, I'm getting like told to get a basket, or you know, sometimes I'm in there with my son and he's got the basket, so I'm just about to put things in, and you know, so I'm getting a little bit of a reprimand about not having a basket, and this other person, white person, a woman, is not getting reprimanded, and she's putting stuff into her own individual shopper. We're both experiencing racism, but she's just experiencing the nice part of it, you know, the part that lets her get away with this. So I think, you know, I don't even know what I would do in that situation. You know, her life isn't really being disturbed, so we are asking, you know, to come out of a comfort zone that's, you know, that you don't have to come out of until you know, it's at your doorstep. So so I'm kind of cynical about, you know, how many people are going to really be willing to do that, you know, and to be willing to say, okay, I got all my jobs based on like my friends, and you know, and that grew, and am I going to like turn down those jobs, and am I going to keep going with my career that way, you know? Just a whole lot of systemic things that are actually very comfortable. And, yeah, what are we going to do? You know?
Exactly, yeah. When the whole system is built that way,
Mhm.
it's really, it's it's on you how to react to it or how to try to work against it as a white person with all the privilege that you have. How much are you willing to risk?
Yeah, that's the question of the hour, because I think right now it's like it's working for it's fine until it's not, you know, and then it's, I mean, feeling bad about it is not changing it.
Exactly.
It's not enough.
And I guess when you are surrounded with other white folks, it seems like the standardized worldview. So when you show up to work and it's only other white people, it seems like from your lens and your canon, this is how it's meant to be. But to do anti-racist work is to confront that and to be uncomfortable with the idea, to your point, that I did get here because my whiteness is palatable. You know, when I apply for a job, that's sort of the framework that they are looking for. And another visual would elicit different emotions. And it involves all of that.
I think we had a question.
That's actually a question, just also a viewpoint I want to share, because my work as an artist is very much centered in the space of identity. And there's a lot of question of how. And something I just want to point to mind is that these systems didn't just come out of a void. That the systems were extensively thought about and then put in place. And part of how we can, you know, sort of shift our perspective is to see what other systems that were displaced. Because there were systems that existed, you know, pre-colonial times, and how were these systems removed, and then sort of highlight those spaces and see how they've shifted and changed. And most of them are encoded in language, culture, in the arts. And so these solutions are there, but sometimes, you know, it takes so much work and the willingness to do that. And when you're already experiencing so much, you forget to think about these places. But if there's anything that I would really love to say is that, you know, if you go in there, then you can sort of build your own territories and build your own bridge, and, you know, then the waves amplify. So, yeah, just wanted to share that.
Thank you. It's really beautiful. I think if there are no questions or remarks, we can move on to... Yes, of course. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to, about the the journalist, it was funny that the way that he framed it, like 20 to 30 people have a problem with it, like it was always a problem. So I think it's interesting how, you know, this idea that some people find it a problem and others don't. I think that's very problematic because it was always an issue. I also find it interesting that when you bring up whiteness in conversation with other white people, people get very like awkward and uncomfortable and confronted. And I think that's maybe one way to just bring it up, you know, and in a safe space, of course. But I think that people, like white people are not, they're not reminded every day that they are white. People of color are. I think that's something just to be aware of that. I think that's maybe one way to challenge it.
Yeah, that's super interesting because, you know, we have a lot of media, film and television, and it's with all white casts, and you think that it's about whiteness, but it's never really about whiteness. So there's never really the actual, you know, mechanisms. Like, let's see if I can come up with an example. Just about hiring practices. We have like a heroic view of whiteness or funny. You know, there's a lot of aspects of whiteness, but not the thing that makes it whiteness, I guess, is what is missing in a lot of media. And I can't really come up with an example right off the hat, but I'm always thinking of this, like, how can we show? And I think the poet Claudia Rankine is really good at, like, talking about whiteness. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with her work, but she writes these kind of prosaic poems, very short, and one of them, and they're kind of autobiographical or not, but at one point she says, you know, this isn't a poem, but I went to my therapist, and it was a new therapist. I knocked on her door. It was at her house. She had her practice on her house, and this woman, like, opened the door and was like, "What the hell are you doing here? Get the fuck out of here." And then she said, "I'm Claudia. I have an appointment with you at 2:00. And then the woman was like, "Oh, shit." And so she captures these moments of actual whiteness very, very well. I mean, there's a lot better examples than I'm giving, but it's been so many years since I read the book. But we don't see a lot of, like, what whiteness really is. We see, like, an exaggerated racist or racist that, you know, nobody can relate to, and that's racist is other things. Or we see a very heroic savior, or we see, you know, anti-heroes as well, but not the element of, the definition, the whiteness. And I think that's if we had that would be great. Then center it for sure. Let's look at it. Yeah, sorry, what did you say?
I think in film, maybe the film Get Out gets pretty close.
Yeah.
It's got some exaggerated bits, of course, but there's such insidious elements. But if I do discuss the film with Black people, they're able to say, we know what that means. Or recently, I don't know if everyone saw, what was it? Was it the Critics' Choice Awards? Where there's someone on stage, I think her name is Jane Campion, a white woman.
Jane Campion, And
she
that's
made,
whiteness.
Yes, and she made a particular remark on stage when she was accepting her award, and she mentioned something, and Venus and Serena Williams were in the audience, and she said something about, like, you guys are, I think, trailblazers, but you don't have to compete with men like I do, or something.
Like, they play mixed doubles, so what is she talking about?
And I don't even have to describe it, but every Black woman knew what that meant in that moment and what that felt like in that moment. And then there's a clip later where she's hugging Venus. Yeah. And it's just, I don't even have the words to describe it. She's just hanging on her. So this is the insidious pieces where there's always, it doesn't have to be overt to like hurling the N-word or using a racial slur. But it'll be in the tiny encounters where you're invisible but hyper visible to them as Black in that interaction.
For sure.
So it might be that they will, just as an example, so if you're with a white person and you're seeing their parents, so you're your parents-in-law, for instance, and they want to take you to a right-wing part of the country, they don't understand what that means for you. And they'll be like, oh, no, it's great. Like, definitely let's go. And it's like, but I'm Black.
Right.
But then they will touch your hair when you have braids on. So it's like they will, or they might say, oh, I know this other person from like Uganda that you can then meet. So they will see you as Black, but then not also see you as Black at the same time. So it's when it suits them best, when they don't want to or confront the bad side. So if we go to this town, this is what you might face, but then they get to sort of explore you as this, you know, novel entity or whatsoever. So it really is being hyper visible and invisible in the same breath.
I don't know where we have the mic. Yeah.
Maybe you go first because the microphone is just there.
No, I mean, in my personal experience, I mean, how I experience racism in a daily life, or very often. Sometimes I don't leave the house, of course. Is actually those small things, and you don't even need a dialogue. And I have realized. Man, like, it's just like and sometimes my friends or even my partner doesn't even see it. So I go to I have a son. I have a son who was born. My girlfriend gave birth to him. He's 100% genetically Dutch. If they want to have the genetic composition of him, as it's like there's a definition of allochtoon or of not here. I joke sometimes. I joke to my girlfriend sometimes. Yes, they're going to think I'm the nanny. And she's like, oh, come on, don't say that, Lola. And I'm like, yeah. And I also told her, you know what? I make Julian an allochtoon, because the definition of allochtoon is that if one of the parents wasn't born in the Netherlands. And I'm like, and she's like, come on. And I'm like, yeah. And then I went to drop a little girlfriend of his to his home, and with very busy parents, rich parents in the center of Utrecht. And it was so fucking weird. It's like business mother, manager from Rabobank, with the phone. Hey, yeah, busy. Opens the door, keeps on talking. I leave the girl, and I'm like, whoa, that's weird. Like, I just felt like the nanny. And all the time, and I know I'm not saying that I'm not Black, but this kind of exclusion is like, fuck. It's really tiring. It's exhausting.
Sorry, I have an extended comment and try not to sound like an idealist. Questions about hypervisibility and invisibility. I'm Nigerian. I lived all my life in Nigeria, and I moved to Netherlands 18 months now. And there's a subtlety that if you ask about whiteness, I think the core of it, not all of it, comes from a fear of realizing that the foundations that their existence is built on is very shaky. And to connect with that is, even I myself, when I connect with deeper sides of myself, is very fearful. And if those conversations aren't had, there will really be so much progress, first thing to say. Also, when you also think about the systems that have been put in place are so entrenched that it's like really pressing reset. And so that is also a viewpoint to have and to carry all the time. And for a white person, that's just so much labor. So for me, I try to think about steps forward, because why I reference that being Nigerian is that I've experienced classism, tribalism, and deep patriarchal society. And the essence of these things are very much connected. And to undo that, we have to see how they are all threaded together with circular economy. And most times we're so spot on one point and stay there, and forget to flow, because we're human and we're infinite. And so it's very important that as we speak to one space, we let the other spaces interact with our space. And that's what culture is. You know, that's what art is. That's what music is. And so oftentimes, the fear of being is usually the beginning of realizing whiteness. So this informs thoughts that I see are very idealistic for me, and it's part of my work. But I just wanted to share that if that gives anyone anything, you know, because you would continue to see the loops of navigating the forms of these things without seeing the roots of them or the essence of them. And when you can connect with that, then you can start to really see how you can shift towards true change, if that makes sense to anyone. So
I think we are seeing the roots, I think, because the evening is specifically about misogynoir, and, you know, patriarchy is a big part of that. So, I mean, we are definitely aware of, you know, the systemic situation, but this particular evening, because Black women and dark-skinned Black women don't ever really have an evening, as far as I know, you know, it's like, so that, you know, it might seem like we're like pigeonholing, and we are, and it's specific, you know, there's a reason for that.
Can I just say, I was really fascinated by the very first clip, the TikTok.
Yeah.
Because this white need to look as if they're empowering people in the social services system here where I work, 78% of jeugdzorg in Amsterdam is young people of colour, and the majority of them are female. And with Veilig Thuis, 68% of the families that they're trying to help are mothers of colour.
Yeah.
And I see it over and over again when I'm sitting there as an interpreter or talking to the police officer, that first of all, the police officers are like, oh, well, it's their culture. And then the social workers, who tend to be women, but white women, are sitting there waiting for the woman to cry. Because if she can cry, then she's going to get some help. Obviously, she needs helping. So what you were saying earlier about either being this strong woman or being apologetic, this role play of the woman of colour is so prevalent in these subtle ways. And in order to get these young children into proper housing or proper education, or these women actual help from domestic violence, they automatically know sometimes that if I am angry, or if I actually portray the horror properly, I'm actually looking like I can cope. So the best way is to look vulnerable and assume the position. And in those instances, I think misogynoir is the framing of us in this institutional way that is in the universities where they teach social workers, where they teach police officers, okay, this is what you're going to find out there,
Yeah.
and this is how to deal with it. So watching this image of these TikTok people crying, that they can feel, oh yes, I'm doing this wonderful work because I'm not being racist, because I'm actually working in these environments, but actually the enforcement of the racism in framing is just bizarre.
It's I call those professions the foot soldiers of white supremacy, because if you look at the elementary school teachers, and you get this like blonde army, and you get this and I'm totally over generalizing, but like you're talking about that aspect of child welfare, and there's a huge amount of saviorism and a huge amount of foot soldier behavior, and we're getting way off the point, but this like infuriates me, because if we talk about what can we do, I think we really need to turn our gaze towards all the foot soldiers who keep this system alive, because it's not the huge the big steps, it's like the ants who are really performing the small I have a 13-year-old, and so I've seen him go through the whole system, and just I've seen all these foot soldiers at work, and you can only praise teachers. I wouldn't like talk about an individual teacher or about individual white women. It's about whiteness and how it informs the teachers, and how it informs the social workers, and how so that's something to really unpack. And I think we don't want to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the people who want it unpacked aren't the ones who are in power, of course, because this is going back to the very first 5 minutes of the film, because that horrible table scene where I forgot his name. Yeah. Funny or not, but I think the fact of the man who uses the N-word, while he's talking about boat migrants, I think, and then Savannah's like, what the hell, and she's on her own basically. But he says something like, yeah, it's okay, I have a black wife, or I have a black partner, I have a partner of color. I can't remember exactly his exact words, but black wife. Yeah, it's just like shit, that proximity. That's still kind of allowed here, to say, that's like really old news as far as racism goes. But I'm getting a little bit off track talking about foot soldiers.
Thank you. I think we can move to the next clip that we're going to watch.
Yeah.
So we're going to watch Silvana having a conversation with someone after a speech that she is given during the elections.
Ik wou toch ik heb heel veel waardering voor wat je de afgelopen jaren gedaan hebt en de moeilijkheden die je daarmee bent aangegaan. Dus dat ben ik ook heel serieus. Maar tegelijkertijd vraag ik me af, dus een woord als racisme is natuurlijk echt een ongelooflijk groot woord. Ja. En mensen vinden het worden er over het algemeen heel
ongemakkelijk van.
Ja, maar niet ongemakkelijk. Voelen zich tot in de kern van misschien de echte racisten, want die wisten dat al van zichzelf. Ja. Maar heel veel andere mensen die hebben dat helemaal van zichzelf dat gevoel niet.
Ja, maar weet je wat het is? Het is heel vervelend dat die mensen dat zo voelen.
Ja.
Wat veel vervelender is, zijn de mensen die het dagelijks moeten leven. En het probleem is dat wij met elkaar, en daarom had ik het ook over onderwijs, we zullen moeten beginnen met uitleggen wat is racisme. Racisme is een systeem. Dat systeem leidt tot gedrag en dat gedrag noemen we vaak discriminatie. Maar we hebben in Nederland, zijn we vergeten, dit soort ongemakkelijke gesprekken met elkaar te voeren. Dus heel veel Nederlanders zijn vergeten dat we te maken hebben, dat we een slavernijverleden hebben, dat we een koloniaal verleden hebben.
Het is heel goed om dat te adresseren. Sterker nog, is noodzakelijk om het te adresseren. Alleen ik denk dat we moeten doen zonder het woord racisme.
Nee, want we moeten het beestje bij de naam noemen. Wij noemen seksisme. Maar wij gaan ook niet zeggen, ja, dat vinden de mannen vervelend hoor, als we seksisme noemen.
Nee. Kijk, het punt is, academisch zijn een boel dingen heel erg waar. Dat geldt voor allerlei dingen die je kan bedenken in het leven. Maar de vraag is, hoe krijgen we verandering? Want dat is wat we willen. Dus doelmatigheid bij dit soort dingen, van waar gaat het over, wat zijn de kernwoorden in het debat, die dus niet polariseren, maar mensen die
Nee, het woord polariseert niet. Het fenomeen polariseert.
We begrijpen elkaar.
Nee, we begrijpen. Nee, maar hier gaat het
Ik
dus
denk dat ik jou...
Ik begrijp wel wat je zegt. Ik ben het alleen niet met je eens. Je neemt een symptoom weg, maar niet het probleem. Nee. Want als we racisme opeens, weet ik veel wat gaan noemen, bestaat het fenomeen nog steeds. Kunnen we er nog steeds niks aan doen?
Ja, kijk. Het is natuurlijk wel aan muziek met heel veel dingen, hè? Om mensen...
Maar racisme heet nou eenmaal racisme.
Ja, wel, dat snap ik. Maar dan nog is het zo dat...
Ja, ik word er echt heel moe van. En heel verdrietig ook.
Waar word je verdrietig van?
Nou, van de suggestie dat een enorm probleem alleen goed aangepakt kan worden als het systeem dat verantwoordelijk is voor dat probleem niet benoemd wordt, omdat de beneficiaries van dat probleem zich anders misschien wel geschoffeerd voelen. Daar word ik dus echt verdrietig van. En ik word er verdrietig van omdat ik dag in dag uit dit soort gesprekken voer met mensen, met alle respect, die ongetwijfeld ook een oplossing voor het probleem willen, maar niet dag in dag uit geconfronteerd worden met de gevolgen van het probleem. En dus tegen degene die er last van heeft gaan zeggen, ik wil best met jou samen aan het probleem werken, maar dan wel op een manier die voor mij prettig is. En daar heb ik moeite mee.
Ja, maar dat is niet wat ik zeg, hè?
Jawel, dat is wel wat je zegt.
Als je iemand heel hard tegen zijn schenen schopt,
ja, nee. Het benoemen van racisme is niet iemand tegen zijn schenen schoppen. Racisme uitvoeren, dat is iemand tegen zijn schenen schoppen. Nee, je draait het elke keer om en ik neem er aanstoot aan. Ik neem er echt aanstoot aan. Echt waar.
Ja, maar als je dan moet ik dan gewoon heel hard gaan zeggen dat ik aanstoot aan neem, dat jij de aanstoot aan neemt? Of kunnen we gewoon door blijven praten?
Ja, maar dit toontje, hè?
Ja, nou is het toontje ook weer fout.
Ja, maar je bent mij de hele tijd aan het uitleggen.
Nee, maar ik luister ook heel goed naar jou.
Je bent mij de hele tijd aan het uitleggen. En ik heb het net al gezegd, hoe een probleem dat ik dagelijks meemaak, waar ik dagelijks mee te maken heb, het beste aangepakt kan worden, zodat het bij de ander geen zeer doet.
Ik ben een behoorlijke anti-Zwarte Piet-activist, eerlijk gezegd.
Maar vind je het gepast, Zwarte Piet is racisme? Vind je dat dan gepast, het woord racisme daar?
Ik denk dat het ja, ik vind het racisme een heel zwaar beladen woord. Ik denk dat het voor heel veel mensen totaal niet een uiting van racisme is dat ze Zwarte Piet leuk vinden.
Maar dit is waar het misgaat. De grond is racisme.
Ja, dat kan je nog 100 keer zeggen, maar als die mensen daar in zo'n aanstoot aan nemen, right or wrong?
Nee, niet right or wrong.
Nee, maar dit is... Nee, daar zijn we het snel over eens. Nee, maar dat is de vraag niet op dat moment.
Jawel, dat is wel de vraag.
Ja, oké.
Ja. Waarom moeten die mensen geaaid worden? Ze mogen best op... Jawel, dat is wat je zegt. Ze mogen best erop gewezen worden, maar wel op een manier die verder geen zeer doet. Laten we ze niet confronteren met de harde werkelijkheid, want dan moeten we het woord racisme gebruiken.
Dat zeg ik niet.
Je gebruikt heel veel andere woorden en toch is dat wat je zegt.
Ja, dat is jouw conclusie. Het gaat mij om het resultaat.
Het resultaat
ik wil die mensen meekrijgen in de richting van beëindiging daarvan. Daar gaat het om.
Dat is een prachtig streven, maar waarom kan dat niet met de waarheid?
Omdat kennelijk mensen dat heel lastig vinden om dat te horen, hebben mensen heel veel verschillende redenen voor. En dus dat is niet altijd de beste manier om resultaten te bereiken. Maar dat hoef ik jou niet uit te leggen, denk ik. Dat weet je heel goed.
Nou ja, ik geloof niet dat ik...
Jij bent meer politicus dan ik, dus...
Dat weet ik niet. Dat moet nog blijken.
Dat weet ik wel.
En je zegt dat je ben je ook actief voor de partij?
Ja, maar niet in
niet uitvoerend. Okay. Nee. Maar ik ga je vast vaker tegenkomen op dit soort avonden.
Ja, wellicht.
Leuk.
Succes.
Dankjewel.
Ja.
Dankjewel.
Vooral ook met het bestrijden van...
Dat ene.
Jesus. Yeah. It's extremely layered.
Oh, yeah.
It's frustrating but so familiar. I think I speak for a lot of Black women when we say we've been in that situation before. But I think the most interesting thing, and it goes back to a conversation we already had, is that not even the insidious bit, but that foot soldier bit. So this is a man who consistently prefaces, I'm liberal, I'm also anti-Pete. And so when you have a certain view of what a racist looks like, whether it's someone hurling around the N-word, someone part of the KKK, it excuses behaviors like this, where it's almost he says it to then go on and demean her entire argument. So that was the most striking thing about this clip. and of course the discomfort with the term racism over the actual process of racism, and just the intent on being the gatekeeper of what racism is. So trying to overhaul the definition of those that actually experience it versus the perpetrator. And then another interesting bit is when he used the language real racist. And again, that goes into the whole, what's racist and what's not. And I think, like him, many people have a very limited understanding of what racism or how it can present. So it can range indeed from, the overt right-wing fascist, but also it's your lovely grandmother that goes to Sunday service. And it's a way to distance himself from any accountability. So that being dropped in the conversation, his political leanings being dropped in the conversation, and how he approaches that entire interaction is that I'm doing this in your best interest. So these aren't necessarily my views, but I think if we want to win, so he also entirely co-opts her political stance, we're going to need to tone it down a little bit. And then it just feeds into this entire thing about, policing the way Black women express their politics or the needs that they have. And similar to what we saw with the Jasper case, similar to what we saw with the interviewer, it's flipped. And the onus is on her to create this argument, but also she's the one that needs to, tweak things here and there for people to be receptive to what she says. If she raises her voice, and suddenly she's intimidating. And again, it's just a way to get out of, taking accountability for what's going on. And I think the most painful part about this clip and the previous clips, again, at the end, she still has to maintain this cordiality that's not afforded to her in any of these interactions. So it's again, could never be me, but massive kudos to her.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see the face expressions of every single man in there where they put their hands together, they shake, and they like do this smirk, this laugh, and it's so angry to see because you just want to slap him, and she has to keep herself together so that she doesn't seem like...
Exactly. And what I find so interesting also with all the men that she was arguing with, their expertise on the arena doesn't come close to hers, but they're still intent on arguing with her. And it's a pattern that I do see a lot in white cis males where they might even preface a conversation with, I don't really know about this topic, but we'll somehow end up arguing with you. Yeah. Whereas I'm not about to argue with a biomedical student on like genetics or whatever. Like I know that there's people who are just going to have different expertise, especially if it's a lived experience. But time and time again, we see that interaction. And I guess that's why the name for this theme comes about, because it's white man, Black woman constantly, because it's like where the most enfranchised meets one of the most disenfranchised. And somehow even in that power dynamic, they still feel like I can still have a say here. I'm still entitled to an opinion, even if I have zero experience with what's going on.
I would like to add something too.
Yeah.
It's really interesting the fact that you said even if they don't meet her on an intellectual level at all.
Exactly.
Because also it's very fascinating to me how she, as a Black woman, has to be so educated.
Indeed.
Because like otherwise she might not be taken seriously at all. Like what are you even talking? If she just like talks about her personal experiences or like not as a politician,
Indeed.
It's very difficult to have an impact or have other people listen to you. But she has to educate herself, like has to bear all that labor, extra labor, like other than being affected by the racism and the sexism and all of that, but has to like be the book to be like to explain to other people.
But
what actually is.
That's one of the hilarious things about racism is that you can have if white males are at the top, they can still be this, the CEO of everything, but also I don't know about that. I'm also bumbling idiots at the same time. Like I think when Me Too was. If you hear them talking about Me Too and they're like, I don't know if I can even touch a woman, and it's like, how can you get that far in life and to this level, but you don't understand about putting a hand on his shoulder? That doesn't, the math isn't mathing. So I would disagree that people don't know what racism is. I think they know exactly hair fine what it is, but it's also a protective place to be, to pretend you don't know, to just be, but then you get to be like the CEO of the world, but I still don't understand how it all fits together. And true, I can understand how you wouldn't know about every detail of the systems that you're benefiting from because a lot of it's invisible. But, it's 2022. We've had there's a lot of in your face, even if you're not trying to absorb it. there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of words. You don't have to know the terminology for everything, but it's there. I mean, we're absorbing so much information on every without trying. So yeah, I really never believed this. Like, I don't understand. And as soon as in this clip, for me, it's like a cue to get out of that conversation. As soon as I hear the word debate paired with racism, I'm just like, no, it's not a debate. It never is. And as soon as someone starts using the language of debate, or even just throwing that word in, it's just then no, we're not going to just debate humanity. Yeah, I lived. It's like, what's there to debate? I just feel like we don't even have to call. I'm just going to make a segue to feminism, because I remember being younger and like hating that term, and someone was like, well, why don't you call yourself a feminist? And I was thinking, yeah, but all the things that we, all our demands, they're kind of common sense, really. We don't want to be killed, for no reason. We want the right amount of money. So why are we calling it a special thing if it's common sense, And I feel like, why are we debating about racism? We all agree. I mean, that it's, except for the real racists, except for people who just are like proud of racism, and that's a whole different group. But I think we're mostly agree that it's wrong. So why are we still debating it? That's just what's it called? Wasting time. It's just. Yeah, I forgot the word. Yeah, it is. And, that prolongs it longer. I think I talk about that in an article about how, if we keep just talking about it like this and we never really look at it in terms of what we're going to do to break it, then we'll still be here next week talking about. But I think the really big component is just courage, basically. And it's courage in these really small moments to just go, hey, wait, that was said, and I think when I say that, people think I mean for them to do something like heroically violent and explosive, bombard, but I don't. I mean, just disrupt the racism every single time you have a chance to. It's scary. I mean, it's maybe you have to practice, but, like you would do in an, communications course, but it's possible to do it. Just disrupt it. Just like, no, we're cutting this off. I'm not going to condone it, I think I went a little bit off on a tangent.
No, it's all about intersectionality, as we talked about. So I don't think you're off topic in any way. Does anyone want to add something or anything? Questions? Okay, then. Can we wrap?
Because we're almost finished with the Q&A, and this would be a good opportunity of anything from bringing all the clips together. If you haven't had a chance to watch the whole film, please do. It's a really important film, especially if you're not from the Netherlands. It definitely gives you an idea of like the politics that ethnic minorities and people of color face here. Me coming from the U.S. and Mexico is very eye-opening to see the experiences of her here and realizing like this is exactly the same experiences that black and brown people face in the U.S. So it's a very, very important topic because it applies to, not just you if you don't identify as an ethnic minority, but, your friends, your family members. So it's a really, really important topic. So we do ask if you can watch the rest of the film so that it can, make more sense than, maybe more context as to also what you've pointed out of how this film was about her. But in the end, I think many related to her experiences as a black woman for some, and then for some as a woman in general, which is, we go back to the themes of racist sexism. It's a whole other concept. Yeah, please.
People probably don't know about Silvana, that long before she was a politician, some of her first published works are poetry. And being an artist and a writer, to go into politics, part of her does love to take on this conversation because words have been her life. And she has a child who also wears the same colour of skin. So this fight that she brings, she can artistically express in performance so well. And any of you that can vote by AIM tomorrow.
For sure.
Thank you. And we got very lucky today to hear some spoken word by Daniela which is really, really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it was a great way to start our event, just to give voices and to amplify everyone here in the room, to share their lived experiences, which is super, super important. Personal stories, I think, is how we can start or continue to change the narrative of what people see us as. And that's exactly what Silvana is doing. And I think that's why she maybe made this film as well, is, you know, for people to see this other side of her. Because she said, I'm either a diva or I'm a demon, which is a terrible thing to, you know, be classified as, given her experiences. You know, she's an intellectual. She's much more than what those labels, you know, can mean to her. But she's a very strong woman.
Yeah, I did want to. I think we were talking about the title because, you know, and she does say this, but how both of those are kind of a negative. You know, if you're a diva, if you're demanding your basic rights, you know, as human. But yeah, that we were problematizing, and I think that's why for this evening we wanted to add. You know, is she that, or is she just a determined and
person?
You know, I mean, I understand why they titled it this way because she does say that about herself, but it's just. You know, we're so narrowly defined as Black women, and you can never be angry, and you can never be, you know, demanding.
It's like binary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to end with a quote from her son.
Yeah.
I think it didn't show the first clip that we showed. I don't think it was the full clip that we meant to show, so I do apologize for that. But after she's attacked, Silvana's son says, Mom, when you're not here anymore, people will understand. Then they'll put up a statue of you. And then she says, it's all part of it. And it's just, you know, it gives you the chills because why does it have to continue to be this way? You know, it happened with MLK and it continues to happen with, you know, Black politicians and people who speak up.
There's always this term about talking about progress, you know, like, oh, the first Black doctor, first this, that. But actually, Black people are like waiting for like whiteness to make some progress in and of itself, you know, and not wait for her to be dead and have a statue and then understand. But, you know, the possibility for progress is like right now, basically.
Well,
that's all.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, being present and listening and sharing your thoughts with us. I think we really created a really safe space for everyone to share their thoughts, and kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about Amsterdam United. And there's still many more workshops for Week Against Racism, so you can check them out online. But for Amsterdam United, we're having 2 upcoming events which are very important. And it goes a lot with what you were mentioning about chief diversity officers, which is something that within our students organization we try to do, is really make the university inclusive, because one thing that's been really popular right now is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and diversity officers in the Netherlands within higher education, where now they're implementing diversity officers. However, most of them are white. In the UvA specifically, we went from a white woman who had to step down, and now as of February 1st, a white male is now chief diversity officer. And I don't want to say sometimes it's not problematic, but it's more so how can we have the conversations with the people that decide to become chief diversity officers. It's one thing, you know, that they do it, and then when they're confronted by student organizations, for us, like for example, they don't have much to share. And so our mission is to make sure that we're heard within the University of Amsterdam. So if the people here are UvA students, we're having events coming up in the next 2 months where we're calling out the university, and we're talking about specifically decolonizing academia, because it all starts there. It starts with what we're being taught at the university with professors. 2 weeks ago, we had a student who came up to us because a professor used the N-word, you know, at the UvA in 2022. And so we're having these, you know, students are having these experiences, and they have nowhere to go. Aren't they supposed to go to the diversity officers or to their academic advisors? Yet they're coming to student organizations, you know, which we're very proud that we're, you know, that we're there. And with that, we created a new project called Community Connect, where within the Amsterdam United board, right now we have a board, and we have events for you all. like
Cool.
these, which is great. But we want to create a community, so we want to open it up to members for you to come to our meetings, our monthly meetings, and share the changes that you want to see at the university. Tell us what event you want. Or just come so that you can have a conversation with a like-minded individual, or something that you shared in experience in the classroom. Little to know, someone else might have experienced the exact same thing. So we're having that event on April 5th at the Rutas Island campus, and you can come by and share your thoughts and learn more about the work that we do and what work do you want to do? How do you want to hold yourself accountable to see the change you want to see at the university? We're also going to do really fun things like the restoration, a yoga, meditation, and soundscape experience. So we rented out a really fancy yoga studio, and it's free, and you can come and heal and rest and treat your body and your mind. And so we're having that at the end of the month on March 31st. And for this event, it's mostly students, but if you're not a student, and we might have a spot opening, you might be able to join our yoga session. But you can follow us on social media, check out our website, sign up for our newsletter so you can come to more events like these, or to tell us what events you would like to see, or how else you can get involved. So that's a little bit about what we do. And we just want to thank Cole, Valerie, and Daniela for being here today and sharing your thoughts and being who you are. Just incredible, powerful woman.
I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah,
Thank you
please.
for all of this and the events. And I don't know if I can come to one, but I would love to suggest, is it not an idea to just have a complete research to the transparency of how the diversity officers, got hired? And is that even possible? Like, what is the trajectory been, and what's the education, and why is that person the most qualified? And I wonder, without, of course, you're going to step on toes, but I think those are the things that we have to know. Like, how did you get here? How did you get to this position? Because, I think that's a worthy project. I don't know if that's something your organization would even tackle.
Yeah, we will make sure to ask that to the new chief diversity officer.
Yeah, to kind of reveal some source, because I remember being very surprised at how Robin DiAngelo got her first job, so thinking, well, wait a minute, you weren't even qualified, and they just put you in this. So that's because
even worse than not being qualified,
not having any lived experience,
contributing to the things that he's positioned to avoid or help solve. Maybe that's the worst part. Students have had experiences
with it.
Yes, and then who should they go to?
Yeah,
when he's the cause. And
but the why is there no transparency? I mean, why can we not know how this person beamed in? That's the crux of how what's going wrong with replacing one diversity officer with another.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
Yeah,
is
cool.
How is this happening? I mean, if we look at the bigger picture, you also think of there's a lack of ethnic minority professors to even take the position, and then there's the emotional labor that you have to take on to be able to do that, which is even worse. But
but I'm sure, I think it pays enough that somebody would want to do the emotional labor who's also got a skin in the game, and I think it's playing into this idea of neutrality of whiteness, and it isn't, and that we're even having that discussion that this, I'm the neutral person to convene over diversity is absurd. Everybody in here would agree, but I'm just for transparency and naming the actual foot soldiers of the. That's my brand, I guess, and how I write is always to what are the actual mechanisms, and look at the boring part, how did you get here and what were the steps. Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much,
We have to
everyone,
wrap
for
it
coming. Yeah. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
We forgot to do our little joke about the week against racism.
Oh my gosh, we forgot.
And then I just realized, what are we going to do the other weeks if this is...